WrestleMania 35 will forever be etched in the annals of professional wrestling history, not just for the spectacle, not just for the fireworks, but because three women, Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, and Ronda Rousey, did something no woman had ever done before. They main evented the grandest stage of them all. They stood in the final match, in front of the world, and declared, not asked, declared, that women's wrestling was no longer the sideshow. It was the show. But what followed that history-making moment was something far more complex, far more layered, and still the subject of conversation years later. Charlotte Flair, the multi-time women's champion and wrestling royalty by blood and battle, recently opened up on the Games with Names podcast about her feelings on that historic night. And perhaps, to the surprise of many fans, she didn't express unfiltered joy or pride. In fact, she said she hasn't even rewatched the match. Why? Because greatness often doesn't come neatly packaged in perfection. The finish of the match, one that crowned Becky Lynch's Becky Two Belts, was marred by controversy. A botched pinfall. Ronda Rousey's shoulder clearly off the mat. A moment meant to be the crescendo of women's wrestling history, reduced, in part, to a flurry of online debate and wrestling purist frustration. And yet, Charlotte is honest. Honest in a way that few performers dare to be. She didn't deflect. She didn't blame. She acknowledged the truth. We would have not main evented WrestleMania had it not been for Ronda. Hands down. Let that settle in. In an industry built on competition, ego, and character, Flair gave credit where credit was due. Ronda Rousey, Olympian, UFC Hall of Famer, crossover superstar, brought the outside eyes. She brought the legitimacy that the mainstream could latch onto. She brought the storm. Charlotte didn't pretend that it was purely the WWE machine, or her own accolades, or even the groundswell behind Becky Lynch that sealed the deal. It was Ronda's name, her star power, her gravity that pulled the main event spot toward them like a black hole of anticipation. And that's not a knock on Lynch or Flair, it's the reality of spectacle. WrestleMania isn't just wrestling. It's Hollywood, it's theater, it's ESPN highlights and TMZ whispers. And in 2019, Ronda Rousey was as hot a name as any in sports entertainment. That match was supposed to be magic. It was history. It was symbolic of decades of hard-fought progress. It was Trish and Lita. It was Chyna. It was every forgotten diva who was handed a microphone and bikini instead of a storyline. But magic doesn't always land smoothly. Charlotte admits it. She admits the moment didn't go as cleanly as it should have. She admits the pinfall is hard to digest. She admits she doesn't rush to revisit it. And maybe that's okay. Because sometimes history is messy. Sometimes barriers break with jagged edges. Sometimes the most important moments don't wrap up with a tidy bow, they leave bruises. But what can't be denied is this: those three women did it. They closed the curtain on WrestleMania. They headlined where no woman had before. And even with a shoulder off the mat, the weight of the moment wasn't lessened. Yet in Charlotte's words, there's also a sense of realism about what comes next. WrestleMania is now 2 nights. And while women have main evented night 1, Flair isn't optimistic about them closing both nights, or being the final main event again. Why? Because the circumstances that created WrestleMania 35 were, as Flair implies, a lightning in a bottle situation. A combination of mainstream star power, organic fan momentum, and perfect timing. Could it happen again? Sure. But will it? Flair doesn't think so. It's not bitterness. It's not resignation. It's perspective. She knows how rare that perfect storm was. She understands the commercial mechanics of WWE. She knows what it takes to get that final slot. And she's not banking on that perfect formula being replicated anytime soon. But let's not mistake realism for lack of pride. Flair is proud. Proud of the moment. Proud of the movement. Proud of the blood, sweat, and tears it took to even be considered for that slot. She knows what it meant for women in wrestling. She knows the little girls who saw themselves in that ring. She knows what it meant for the history books. But she also knows the flaws. And sometimes, knowing both the glory and the glitches is what makes an athlete truly great. Charlotte's reflection isn't bitter, it's brave. Because she's willing to speak honestly about a moment the world saw as perfect, and admit it wasn't. And in doing so, she elevates the conversation beyond just kayfabe and championships. She reminds us that even legends carry burdens. WrestleMania 35 was the end of an era, the last one night, Mania. Since 2020, WWE has split its showcase into 2 evenings. It was a necessary evolution. But it also means that one match will never again carry the symbolic weight of closing the entire event. That, in itself, makes what Flair, Lynch, and Rousey did even more extraordinary. It was the last shot. And they took it. And even with a flawed finish, they made history. Charlotte Flair may not be in a rush to rewatch it. But the rest of us, we won't ever forget it.